State made up of small towns, and that is the focus of the cover story in the March issue of Down East magazine. We're going to talk about that and more. With us here on 207, Editor-in-Chief Will Grunwald. Thanks for coming in. Good to have you here as always.
Great to be here.
So as I said, we'll get to small towns in a moment. Let's talk about some of the other pieces in the March issue, and we'll begin with a really interesting profile of a taxidermist in southern Maine who has a real specialty, doesn't she, Will?
Yeah, that's right. So Bethany Hicks, who works professionally as the taxidermy chick, which I think the name is sort of a nod to the fact that it's traditionally a sort of male-dominated field.
Right.
And yeah, and her niche is unusual. I think you think of taxidermy in Maine, or at least I think of like bears and moose and deer. Her specialty is peafowl. So we're talking peacocks and peahens. You know, you imagine their plumage. It's an elaborate job. She's very talented and has this, just unusual role in this tradition of taxidermy in Maine. Yeah,
you look at those photos and you just say to yourself, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this. And the story of what she does and how she does it, really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's move on to the cover story. Small towns in Maine. Let's start with how you decided to define it, because a small town in Maine is a lot different from what maybe Californians think of a small town. So how did you guys define small town?
Yeah, right. It's a little bit of like a know it when you see it situation. But no, we kind of stuck to what the Census Bureau has used as a definition in the past, which is 5,000 people or fewer, which is a very wide swath of Maine communities. I mean, Maine is chock full of small towns.
Something like 86% of the communities in Maine meet that definition of a small town.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And you've got several short pieces that make up this article. One of them focuses on a really interesting thing that I'd never heard of, the house call EMTs, as they're called, on Deer Isle and Stonington.
Yeah, so, the package as a whole, we wanted to, take little slices of life from small town Maine and look at different dimensions of it. So, everything from bean community suppers, which is sort of a timeless phenomenon, up through an emerging trend, which is this paramedic story. And I think everyone's sort of familiar with the challenges of healthcare in rural places. Yeah. You have declining populations, you have facility closures, couple that with aging populations where, it's not easy to travel far for basic medical care. And one aspect of helping to address that issue is enabling paramedics and EMTs to basically act as old-fashioned house call doctors.
So they go to people's houses, they not only provide medical care, but they also provide a human touch, and that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a familiar face. You get, your glucose levels, blood pressure checked, make sure your medications are in order, and there's a chance that if it snowed, they might help you shovel out a little bit too. And they're filling a community need, but also I think helping to further a sense of community at the same time.
A really important service done in a classic Maine kind of way.
Yes, definitely.
Let's end with one more profile about Jeff Burstead, who lives in Wiscasset and who is a shepherd and shearer extraordinaire.
Yeah, no, this is a photo feature that was brought to us by one of our really frequent photographers, Greta Ribas, and Jeff and his wife Amy run this small farm with a flock of, I think, about 30 sheep. They, sell wool products and sheepskins. I actually have a pair of their socks that I'm very fond of. But in addition to that, Jeff is one of the sort of preeminent shearers in Maine. There are not that many of them.
And it's not an easy thing to do. That's one of the reasons why there aren't that many of them. It's not an easy thing to do. No. And the article explains, and the photos show, give you a sense of just what the challenges are.
I think so. I mean, I was standing on his farm looking at a sheep, kind of considering, hand me essentially high-octane barber shears and ask me to remove all of the wool from this animal, and it would not go well.
Yeah, I've seen it done before, and it's not something that any amateur is ever going to try.
No, this is true.
That is all in the March issue, along with a lot more. Will, thanks for coming in. If you'd like to find out more information about the March issue of Down East Magazine, just head to the 207 section of our website or app and stay with us. We're going to be back in a moment.